So welcome everybody to the Martin E. Segal Theater Center here at the Graduate Center of CUNY. My name is Frank Henschker. I'm the director of the Segal Center. Next to me is Dip Shika, who is one of our PhD students, but also professor of theater at Hunter College, and was the one who connected us with this, what I think is a very unique, rare, and significant evening. We have with us a representative of India, of Indian theater culture, of Kathakali dancing, and everybody who knows theater. Great, yeah, you're right. And loves theater knows what an outstanding, significant global theater tradition that is. It goes back to the 1200s, and as far as I know, maybe the form that has been performed unchanged for almost 1,000 years, and there's nothing we really can compare it. Many other forms we do know, no theater, others do come later. There's the Shinto dancing in Japanese theater, but still perhaps this go even earlier. So what we see is the earliest representation of creating meaning through dance and performance of mankind. It's extraordinary. And Manoj will be performing for us. His makeup was 4 hours today. I would like you to recognize that. And it's a big thing also to present it not in a normal setting, but at a university. So they're really, we're asking a lot from the performers. And Kaladharan will then later on also speak with us and give a little explanation. So the program will be 57, 58 minutes, and then we will have a short panel, and then we will open questions. And maybe, Deepsi, maybe you want to say a few words, very short.
Yeah. Kaladharan has been coming to Hunter College for several years now, and when I saw one of their performances a couple of years back, and my parents were also in the house, I was so moved, and I thought that since Kaladharan was coming to US, and Kaladharan is a retired professor of Kathakali from Kalamandalam, which is the national, the center for performing arts. So when I found out that he was coming, I wanted to share it with our graduate center audience. So thank you.
I'm not in a position to give you a detailed account of what Kathakali is all about because we are running out of time. The performance itself is for 1 hour and 7 minutes. And Kathakali is a South Indian classical dance theatre. It's an amazing amalgam of dance, theatre, music, both vocal and instrumental. And the makeup and costuming takes about 4 to 5 hours for an actor to transform himself into a Kathakali character. So Manoj, who has come here, unfortunately we are not able to bring live music here. It's accompanied by CD music. And Kathakali actors, Kathakali characters seldom speak on stage. The verbal acting is separated from the actors and is given over to 2 vocalists who sing the text of the play. And this is translated into hand gestures, stylized and realistic, and body movements and facial expressions. It involves so much of dancing, and the hand gestures are symbolic. And it's difficult for a person who is not initiated to appreciate, to understand the meaning of each and every hand gesture. But still, the dancing, the movements, the expressions, how he presents himself on stage would be very interesting for you. And today, Manoj is presenting a very unusual character in Kathakali, an Aboriginal hunter, a woodsman, a hunter, who actually sleeps in his house at the dead of night in the forest, and then he hears a sound coming from somewhere, and he wakes up. So as the curtain goes, you will see him lying asleep in his hut and snoring. And then he wakes up listening to this sound, and he goes in search of this sound. Where does this sound come from? And he walks into the forest, deep into the forest, all alone, afraid sometimes, and he shows all these expressions, and he comes across a beautiful lady whose leg is being swallowed by a python, and that's why she wails, she cries. And he kills the python, and the lady is very much relieved, and she tells the hunter that God will bless you, God will give you the gift for what you have done for you. But the hunter is not pleased. He is visibly disappointed. He says, I am in love with you. I cannot let you go. I don't have a wife. I am all alone, but I have a beautiful house where you can come and stay. We can get married, we can have children, we can swim in the river, we can enjoy the spring. Why don't you come with me? But this lady who is actually a queen, a princess, who got married to King Nala, she had received a boon from the Lord of Heaven that if anybody tries to outrage her modesty, he will turn into ashes. So the hunter makes advances repeatedly and tells her to come with him. But then finally she prays the Lord of the Heaven and the hunter turns into ashes. Unfortunately, we don't have also the Damayanti, the princess who should have been here. Manoj as the hunter will show the reflections of the lady who is present. And it's a solo recital. He impersonates the role of Damayanti too at times. Thank you. Hope you would be able to enjoy it.
Thank you very much. Now it's time to turn off your cell phones, and if you have them, just take a moment. I do the same. There will also be a small reception afterwards, a glass of wine if you have additional questions. And yes, he's Hunter College, and we have a hunter from a Kathakali theater. So thank you so much.
Kerala Ishadeshwara
He's going back to the dressing room to take off his dress and also the makeup, and possibly he will come back before this session concludes.
Sit down and we'll start the conversation.
Why is he leaving?
He's taking off the makeup and the costume.
He's coming back?
Yes.
Just for you. Yeah.
No, I was scared.
You can help it. It's a process.
So, tell us a bit. What did we see?
Kaladharan, you wanna?
Sorry?
What did we see?
What did we see?
You mean this particular excerpt?
The character and
The character is, as I told you before, it's an unusual character in Kathakali. It doesn't come into the mainstream of Kathakali performance with its very special makeup and costumes and the headgear. Everything is different from what you usually see as part of the Kathakali repertoire. And this particular character has a kind of freestyle acting. He is not very much within the discipline of the Kathakali's organic framework. He can go outside the territory. That means he can improvise. He can also enact things which usually do not come under the purview of the Kathakali aesthetics.
If we would be in India, where would we see this performance? What would be the occasion and the location and what?
Kathakali has been associated with the Hindu temples of Kerala. So wherever festivals are there, Kathakali performances are held.
The south of India, all the way
In South Kerala. In Kerala. In the southwest tip of the Indian subcontinent. So throughout the temples, performances are there, but formerly there were overnight performances, beginning by 8:30 in the late evening and going on till next dawn.
So they would be in a temple and it would be people who come into the temple and sit down. And
Yeah,
And
the
the
devotees come spectators.
And the audience stays for the entire night? Or?
Yeah, usually, yeah. But now the situation has changed. Now the performances have been cut short to 3 hours. It begins by 6 or 6:30, goes on till 9:30.
So we didn't do too bad for 1 hour at least.
Yeah, not too bad, yeah.
So
Go-
tell us who wrote the story? How is it given to the next generation? How's the training?
This particular excerpt is taken from a great Kathakali play called Nalacharitam, written by a great poet. It's supreme poetic utterance, in fact.
Say
And
again.
each word, supreme poetic utterance. The
Supreme
text,
poetic?
poetic utterance.
Utterance.
In which the implications cannot be completely communicated by the actors. The subtext is there, which is very difficult to be communicated through the hand gesture and language and also expressions, movements and expressions.
Could you maybe, just for the audience, give us an explanation of some of the hand gestures as translations, what they mean? If you could show us.
Yeah,
some,
for instance, I can just tell you. This is tree and this is forest. This gesture comes quite often.
Yeah.
It is repeated.
the mic because it's my
It was repeatedly shown by the actor, tree and the forest. And in the wee hours of the morning, the sun is about to rise, Lord Sun. So that symbol was, that gesture was shown by him.
There was the Matsya. Matsya was there.
Yeah, he was comparing, the hunter was comparing the eyes of this beautiful lady with that of the fish. And lotus flower. The face looks like the lotus flower, which is a very neoclassical image used very much in Kathakali.
Deepshika, since you are a teacher at Hunter College, and so you must know about the hunters, and but also here, a student here. So when was the first time you saw such a performance? What did it mean for you?
You know, when we were growing up in the 80s, I saw some excerpts on TV because that was the national television. We saw a lot of that.
So you saw it first on television?
Yeah, yeah.
How old were you?
Like 6, 7, 8. And then my first live performance was actually the Putana at Hunter. Yeah.
Many years back.
The Putana demon.
In America?
In America, yeah. And the Putana demon is the demon that comes to feed Krishna from her breast. And then she actually offers poisoned milk, but Putana is a demon, so Krishna is able to vanquish her and, yeah.
Krishna sucks her life
Out of the breasts, yeah. And that's a very much like this, very climactic piece, yeah.
So tell us a bit, where does this form of theater fit in contemporary India? Who goes? Who sees it? What does it mean?
So one space is the temple space that is still there. And the other space is the contemporary theater space where dance performances, dance groups are inviting performers to come and perform. And then, of course, SNA, and we actually have Uttara Kulawala. She's a dance professor at Barnard, so she might be able to fill in a little bit on that too. She's a Sangeet Natak Academy award winner also. So the SNA provides a lot of support, right? Some support.
And Kerala Kalamandalam, the institution
Right.
for imparting training and conducting performances of Kathakali, it undertakes performances. Its Kathakali troops travel everywhere and conduct performances, so which become very much secular in the sense that the space where this is performed doesn't have any religious connotations.
Yeah, so that's outside the temple.
Outside the
Yeah,
temples?
yeah. And the Indian government does through ICCR, they promote these performances outside of India on national stages and international stages also.
Yeah, it is incredible. We do not really know how the Greek temple dances looked like. We don't know how Shakespeare really was played. But, you know, this is something we can see almost 1,000 years ago with perhaps small variations. But it's truly one of the original forms of mankind, and to tell a story about a man and a woman, about hunting, about the gods, the forest. Interesting, very modern in a way, that the narrator, you know, has separated the voice from the performer. is uttering and speaking and dancing movements. The music also is on stage, I think, on the performances.
Yeah.
So such an ancient concept, though beautifully contemporary in a dance dramaturgy. The training for Kathakali is legendary. Kortalski, Schachner, and so many others, I think. Peter, if I'm right, you trained in Kathakali once.
Me?
Yeah, did you? Oh, you taught about it, yes, or in workshops inspired by that. Tell us a little bit about the Kathakali training. What time does it start? How do you become a Kathakali dancer?
Ever since Kerala Kalamandalam was established, the ancient system of Gurukula disappeared.
Say again?
The ancient system of Gurukula, gurus, teacher and student. Students stayed with the teacher and learned the art form for years and
Apprentice,
years.
master-apprentice
Yeah.
system
Yeah.
is no longer.
Is no
When
longer.
did it end?
Formally in 1930. By 1930, Kathakali was heading to extinction, and the founder of Kerala Kalamandalam, he thought that this ancient system of training would not survive.
After 1,000 years almost, it
Yeah.
changed.
Actually, Kathakali is only, it was originated in 17th century. But there were other forms also, like Kudiyatam, the traditional Sanskrit theatre, which was evolved in the 10th century. But then Vallathol, a great poet, a visionary, he just came to the conclusion that this art form cannot survive without institutionalization. That's how Kerala Kalamandalam was founded. Since then, those who attained the age of 12 could learn at Kalamandalam and continue his training for
Age of
8
10
to
or
10
12?
years.
You started at 10 years old?
12.
12.
Yeah.
And you go like a special school, you
Yeah.
stay overnight.
Yeah.
It's like a soccer school.
Yeah,
or
it's a
tennis
residential,
school.
strictly residential school, and each part of the body is trained separately. It's fine-tuning of the body, so that you cannot do anything else. A Kathakali actor, when he completes his course, he cannot go for any other work. This is the only thing he can do. Because so much of stylization has gone into his movements, his facial expressions, his hand gestures, his torso movements. So he is fit only for this. As Schachner says, this is his second nature. So he has to go with it. There is no other go.
And so all the gestures and
Each part of
expressions
the
are
body
written
is
down in books and and
Each part of the body is trained separately. And the student would not know what it is all about. It's all technique, pure techniques. And finally, in a full-fledged classroom, everything is brought together. The text, the context, the emotions, the vocal music, the instrumental music, then it becomes a full-fledged performance without makeup and costumes. And then as years pass by, then the spectators would realize this person would be good for female character, this actor would be good for male character, and the teachers would also identify that depending upon the body language of each actor, he is given such kind of roles. That's how Kathakali actors come alive.
and they will carry on that roles for their lifetime.
Yeah, they have to. There is inevitably no choice.
Yeah.
Because it's not really possible to be playing Rama and then all of a sudden transitioning into a Minukku character or something.
Actually, that's possible depending upon the versatility of the actor.
Okay.
Like great actors like Kalamandalam Krishnanayar and Gopi, they could take any roles. The male roles and the female roles, and the noble, the wicked, the grotesque. But most of these actors, they specialize in certain roles.
But like the original Shakespeare comes, well, men only. This is no female.
Traditionally, it has been a male bastion, but from 1970 onwards, a female troupe, a women's troupe emerged in Kerala. And incidentally, Merlin Pitco did a research on the female characterization by female actors in Kathakali.
And how knowledgeable is the audience? Do they, like in baseball here, which I don't really understand, but this is a spider curveball or something, and people see it supposedly from a stadium far away, and it's a tiny place. But does the audience know all the gestures and the movements? And how do they know?
It's a very tough, complex question. Because some among the spectators, they know all the subtleties of acting. the verbal acting, the movements, the expressions, the meaning of the hand gestures, the literature, the rhythm, the music. You should be master of all these, in fact, as spectator, to appreciate the art form in its entirety. But others can enjoy, can have a certain kind of enjoyment, like enjoying the music a little bit, seeing the grotesque characters and the wicked characters when they yell and roar like the aboriginal hunter. That can be appreciated even by a person who is not very initiated.
Like me. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
But how does the audience learn about it? Their parents tell them, the
Actually,
grandparents, or how does they know? How do they know?
For centuries, they actually sat with their grandfathers and grandmothers who explained to them the stories, a little bit of the hand gestures, the expressions.
So in families, they would reenact the story, and then you would go to see the professional.
Exactly.
Almost like house music, and then you go to see
Exactly.
the professional chamber music orchestra.
Yeah. But now, there are various ways in which people can go and appreciate this, because lecture demonstrations are held. Demonstrations help a lot for people to understand and appreciate this art form. Such classes are held everywhere, far and wide, in Kerala and outside.
Very often, television has been the death of local theater traditions. You could see it fast all the time, and people don't want to see it anymore. How is it in India? Is it shown on national television still, and people still go to see the performance, or has it been almost the end of an art form that is normally, I guess, supposed to be live, in person, in a temple perhaps even? So how is the relation between...
The contemporary audience, you mean?
Yeah.
The contemporary audience is a mix, yeah. I'm not in a position, I'm not competent to comment on the sensitivity of the contemporary audience. Of course, there are some who are very initiated and who understand the nuances of acting and dancing in Kathakali. But for most of the audience, it's a kind of general appreciation.
So is it every day on television, or just on the high holidays, or how?
Televisions do not present these programs more often.
Yeah, not as much.
Not
as
much,
it
yeah.
used to.
They just give once in a while, because when there is some news value, then they would give it, otherwise they just ignore. But Kathakali has survived always. It's a dynamic art form. It has withstood the test of time because it can change itself. It's not a conservative form in the first place. According to the changes that take place in the society, Kathakali also evolves. So that's why, of all the classical art forms in Kerala, Kathakali is the most popular, like Bharatanatyam in Chennai.
But in essence, it's also it's a way to explain the divine text, to tell the stories of the gods. Yeah. So Shiva, who is a dancer, a divine dancer in a way by himself, so it's used to explain as the medieval Christian mystery plays, where very often the Catholic Church said, if you cannot understand the Bible, then you wouldn't need a dancer to show you what it's all about. But I think in Indian culture or in Indian religion, it's a fantastic symbiosis, I think, of movement, dance, and the unexplicable in the Jungian sense, as you said, there's stuff you cannot even explain, but the audience receives something of that shining divine presence. When did you see your very first Kathakali performance?
Me? Mm-hmm. My father was associated with the temples. He was an administrator of the temples. So I grew up in an atmosphere in which Kathakali was very popular. So I moved with the actors and the musicians, and I have an inherent taste for music. So if you have a taste for music, then of course you can go into all these, all the Indian dances and theatre forms. So that, and later on then you cultivate that, because you are constantly moving with such kind of an actors and such kind of an atmosphere and culture, then you can easily get into it.
And before we go to audience questions, so how many plots, how many stories, how many variations? Of course, the variation was in the variation, but how many are there? Like Shakespeare plays or Goethe plays, or how many are there that people go and see?
Yeah, Kathakali plays have traditionally been composed from the great Indian epics, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Bhagavata. Bhagavata, which tells a life story of Lord Krishna. Ramayana tells a story of Lord Sri Rama, and Mahabharata tells about the eternal rivalry between the two branches of a family, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Apart from this, Kathakali has also adapted from other epics, yeah. Like King Lear has been made into a Kathakali performance. It was made into a Kathakali performance in late 1980s or so. And then Homer's Iliad and Odyssey were made into Kathakali. Rustum and Sorab was made into a Kathakali play. And like this, so many, but the problem is that this particular, any classical dance form or theatre form has a format, has a form. And this form is the most dominant. And whatever is the theme, the form remains. And because of that, whether you perform a play from Mahabharata, a story from Mahabharata or Ramayana or from Greek epics, it doesn't matter. The form determines it. And if you change the form, then the art loses its identity. So that is one of the biggest constraints of this art form and also its strength, I would say.
So it's like a language, like a piano, where you have the certain notes are clear and you combine them. We still wait for the dancer or performer to come, but maybe we go out right away. Michael, if you could put up a little bit of light to the audience, and we take some question. Maybe say briefly who you are and
My name is
question or comment.
Phil Beischman. Very revelatory and exciting event for me, and I'm sure for everyone here. I was curious about our theater in the West, America, other places, very lately seems to be more and more concerned with social, political issues like gender, immigration, race, and so forth. Now, India is not lacking in those issues. So, I was wondering if there's. Shall I continue? Yeah. I was wondering if there's if this form of theater touches on issues like caste, untouchables, the forest, the civil, sort of quasi-civil war in the forests, or the Naxalite rebellion, or what seems to be a reactionary Hindu government, or the oppression of Muslims, or the annihilation of Kashmir. That's a mouthful. But at any rate, I was curious about that.
I think when it comes to the traditional performing arts and its dominant form and its disciplined movements and expressions, these social issues cannot come into it, in fact. If you are taking it as a discourse in this form, it will not have the desired effect. Because these are social issues which are to be addressed to a larger audience. And Kathakali and other classical forms address only a minuscule audience. Only a small part of the population is interested in it. So if you have social larger issues, why should you choose this form? Why don't you go for other media? There are so many other media that can express these issues more powerfully, much more emphatically than classical dance and theatre. This is my personal view as a critic, as a person who has been associated with this for long. Everywhere I went, I had to undergo this, I had to face these questions. Thank you for raising the question, but these social issues, political issues, all these issues that are very sensitive, these can be raised in other platforms, but not
as
medium
classical
like
ballet
Kathakali.
most probably would not comment on climate change or on things like this, but it's a good question. Since we have a performer here, so first of all, congratulations. It's one of the most beautiful things we have shown in all these years here. You understand it? Yeah. So again, congratulations. I think. How did it feel for you to present your work in this space?
Good feel because good response.
Can you speak in the mic? Because yeah.
I am good feel because good response from you, everybody, all of you. So good feel me on stage.
Yeah, she has a very good feeling about presenting the performance here, yeah. This ambience.
And so how many of the roles of Kali does he perform? How many of the characters does he have in his repertoire?
He performs a wide range of characters, in fact.
Give us a
The
number.
heroes, the anti-heroes, Ravana, Duryodhana, then Sri Rama, King Nala, Bhima, Arjuna, Yudhishthira, all these roles. And of course, all these unusual characters like the Aboriginal hunter, the monkey god Hanuman. Yeah, Hanuman is also one of his specializations.
So like in Commedia dell'arte, he has a repertoire of characters, 10, 20, he can play at any moment, any time, and get into costume.
It's all rehearsed 100 times, 1,000 times, and it's all there in his mind. The moment he comes on stage and when the music comes, everything, all the techniques come to him.
There was a big improvisational element today, right? Right?
Yes,
You were improvising a lot,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So many things.
Improvised.
right.
Yeah.
I
Especially
could
the last
Take
one.
the microphone. Yeah.
Sorry. Especially the last one, 3 babies.
Yes, yes, yes.
On spot.
Yeah. And the Navarasa, the Vatsala,
Yes,
one of the rasas is
Yes,
Vatsala.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Sure.
So we have one audience member who, since a long time, wanted to express her feelings for the performer. Yes, now we are recording it, and
I was very moved by the performance. I was aware, as I listened to the music and watched the movement, that it was very, very tightly related, the specificity of the steps with the music, so that there was a specific thing done to the ta-ra-ta or this or whatever it was. So was that so tightly choreographed that it is constantly repeated with that dance? That's that dance. Oh,
Yeah, you're 100% correct.
oh.
But there is if we have live musicians.
take the microphone.
If we have live musicians, there is a call and response aspect to this performance, which we don't get to see with recorded music. So they might play that sound, that musical arrangement a couple of times, and he might keep doing it few times.
Spontaneously,
Yeah.
the dancer would respond to the da-da-da-da-da, or
Yeah.
whatever the sound.
Yeah, so the call and response, yeah.
The details can change, of course, but basically it would remain the same.
So maybe
you
one
have
or
the
two
live
questions, one and then two. You first.
Thank you so much for your performance, very delightful. You said that Kathakali, we do a lot of perform scenes from Mahabharata and Ramayana. They are very, very long, so do you perform all the stories, the sub-stories and all that, or do you pick, and if so, how do you pick which ones?
No, actually, there have been plays composed from Ramayana. 8 plays have been composed from Ramayana, and that gave birth to Ramanattam, dancing the life story of Rama, from which Kathakali was evolved later, when stories from Mahabharata came into being. So it's a long history, and only select plays are performed, and certain characters Kathakali gives importance to. Like for instance, the actors who come as gods or goddesses in Kathakali do not have much to do. Whereas anti-heroes, they dominate the Kathakali stage. When Ravana comes on stage, the top-ranking artist plays this particular character. Whereas the children come as gods and kill this demon. If Rama is played by a junior artist, maybe the 4th year student learning at Kalamandalam, he would be taking the role of Rama and finally kills Ravana. That's a very unimportant scene in Kathakali. Kathakali always stresses, it's a very special characteristic of Kerala's aesthetic culture. All the anti-heroes are given all powers to dominate on stage. So all the subtleties of acting and dancing, the vigorous dancing of the character Tandava, as we call, that comes very much alive when a character like Ravana comes on stage, when he explains his own stories as a solo recital.
And I guess like in biblical stories, their excerpts are performed, like the birth of Christ or the crucifixion when it's being played out. So it's not always the entire Bible. You would also perform in any
Moments with drama,
spectacle.
human.
Yeah. So one more here, and then we'll slowly have to wrap up.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm intimately familiar with the po-po-po sound because I heard it throughout this vocalization throughout my childhood. My maternal grandmother was born in 1900 on a Greek island, and I heard this frequently during the course of a day. And it was a sound of mild to severe disapprobation, depending on how it was said. There was no shrill version, however.
You mean the sound he made?
Yeah, the pop-pop. The pop-pop.
Actually, Kathakali characters are not allowed to speak or utter anything on stage, even making sounds, yelling or so. But there are exceptions. A few characters like the Aboriginal hunter, they have been given the freedom to yell, groan, then make noises. So this is also a little bit stylized. This may not resemble the actual speaking or the sound or the voice of the hunter, but it's slightly stylized.
Imitating the calls of the hunters for the birds.
Right, yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Maybe as a closing statement, if you something you would like us to know about the work of Kathakali or the performance, what it means to you personally?
അവർക്കൊക്കെ അവരെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് ഈ കഥകളിയെക്കുറിച്ച് ഇവിടെ പഠിച്ച ഒരാളെന്ന് കളിച്ച ഒരാളെന്നുള്ള നിലയിൽ എന്താ പറയാനുള്ളതെന്ന് ചോദിക്കുക. ഈ ആളുകൾ ഇത് എങ്ങനെ കാണണം, എങ്ങനെ ആസ്വദിക്കണം, എങ്ങനെ അതിനെപ്പറ്റി തോന്നിയിട്ടുള്ളൂ.
കലാകാരൻ പറഞ്ഞത് ഞാൻ പറയാം. നമ്മുടെ നാട്ടിൽ ഭാഷ അറിയുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിലും അവിടെ കാണുന്നവരൊരു ഇതുണ്ടല്ലോ. ഇവിടെ ഭാഷ അറിയില്ലെങ്കിൽ അവർ കൃത്യമായിട്ട് മഹാഭാരതം അറിയില്ലെങ്കിൽ കൃത്യമായിട്ട് അവർ റെസ്പോണ്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. നമ്മുടെ ചെറിയ ഇംപ്രവൈസേഷൻ ആയാലും റെസ്പോണ്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അവർക്ക് കൂടുതൽ കഥ അറിഞ്ഞ് ഒന്നുകൂടെ അവർക്ക് കൂടെ മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ കഴിയുമെന്ന് എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു ഈ ഓഡിയൻസ് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച്.
What he feels is that back in India, people understand the story, they are familiar with the text, the context, and they can appreciate the art form much more. But even without knowing all this, the audience he had today, they were able to appreciate the subtleties of the movements and the acting and the dancing. And if they know a little more about the theme, the text and the context, he says, they will certainly be, it will be an engrossing experience for them. So they will all come to Kathakali to a greater extent. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we all now do know a little bit more about Kathakali and about that great tradition of mankind's theater and performance, and really thank you for taking your time. And please, go and see performances wherever they might be in the city. It's stunning.
To see him again?
Is he performing again somewhere soon?
No, actually tomorrow we have a workshop at Bernard.
At Bernard. So maybe you see if you can get your way to the workshop. But if you can do it. But again, thank you so much. And again, this was a spectacular performance. Thank you so much. So we're going to have a little reception here. We have a glass of wine and a little thing. So stay here with us again. Thank you all for coming. And in 2 weeks, we have a great program on circus. Most probably the most significant program on contemporary circus in the Americas, the entire. Thank you.